Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching FutureX, where we bring you the latest insights and trends shaping the future of our globe. We turn our focus to global health, an area of critical importance as the world navigates post-COVID challenges. With geopolitical tensions and vaccine skepticism threatening coordination, the role of organizations like the World Health Organization are more critical than ever. We're honoured to be joined by Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, a leading global expert in tuberculosis and HIV research, former WHO chief scientist and current chair of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Dr. Swaminathan also advises India's National Tuberculosis Elimination Programme, bringing deep insights into both national and global health governance. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here on FutureX. Let's get straight into this. My first question to you is, the WHO pandemic agreement was designed to fix the failures of COVID, yet major powers disagree on technology transfer, pathogens sharing and enforcement. Is the treaty strong enough to matter in a geopolitically divided world?
Thank you for that question. We don't have any other global platform at the moment that brings countries of the world together. That's very democratic because, the World Health Assembly, one vote for each country, however big or small, and which can deal with issues that impact many countries and many regions of the world. So if just one country has withdrawn from the WHO, it doesn't mean that the purpose lost or that it cannot function. And in fact, there's an even greater today, considering all the kind of global health challenges that we face. Of course, the threat of another pandemic is always there, but even more critical and immediate is climate change, as well as the many other health threats we face because of either conflicts or because of other risk factors which are increasing. The WHO is very much required. I can give you another example of where the norms and standards function of WHO is very critical, and that is in the pre-qualification. As you know, the WHO pre-qualifies drugs and vaccines. That means it assures the quality, safety, and efficacy of those products. And WHO pre-qualification is used by both multilateral agencies, global agencies, as well as countries to buy those products from those particular companies which have the pre-qualification. And these are essential commodities, essential vaccines and drugs, which are protecting millions of children and saving millions of lives. And without that pre-qualification, that trust in that product, may not be there. So that's just one example of a critical global function, but there are many others and we can talk about those.
During COVID, vaccine nationalism defined outcomes more than global solidarity. What has actually changed since then to prevent a repeat?
So despite all the challenges and issues which happened in 2025, the good news was that the pandemic treaty was adopted by the World Health Assembly. Of course, there's a very critical part of that, which is the agreement on the pathogen access and benefit sharing. And the negotiations for that are going on presently. So we will have to see, how countries are able to come to a consensus. There are contentious issues there because on the one hand, everyone, including the high-income countries, wants the data that is being collected on pathogens to be shared. This includes the genetic sequence data and other, so that everyone comes to know immediately if there is a new pathogen or if there's an emerging pathogen anywhere in the world which could prove a threat to other countries. But on the other hand, the other aspect is the access to the benefits, which are the vaccines, diagnostics, drugs, or other products, what are called countermeasures that get developed to deal with that particular pathogen. Those are usually produced quite often by companies which are located in high-income countries. They have the maximum resources. And so they are often the first ones to be able to produce a vaccine or a drug. And the access to that is not always available to everybody around the world. Very often it goes to those countries and those populations that can pay more. So that is actually the sticking point where many of the low middle income countries are negotiating, saying that, yes, we can share data, but in return, we should not be denied the benefits when such benefits are created by anyone, anywhere in the world. And I think this is a good principle, equity. Equity is something we learned during COVID, was very important, and which actually proved a barrier in the reach to many populations around the globe. So I believe that these negotiations are going on. They're probably quite tough. But I do hope that countries, all countries, high, middle, and low income, will see the value of global collaboration, of agreeing to certain basic principles of equity and justice. After all, we're talking about saving lives here. We're not talking about something which is nice to have. And a life should have equal value wherever in the world it is. So if we keep that in front of us as a basic principle, I hope that countries can agree that not only should data sharing be free and fair and equitable, but so should access to resources. But at this point, we don't know what the agreement will finally look like.
If major powers step back from global institutions, like the United States has, for example, will regional health alliances replace global governance? And does that make the world safer or more fragmented?
Well, I think that a lot has happened, and a lot of learnings from the pandemic, I think, are now influencing countries to make their decisions. I'll give you some examples. We started something called the mRNA Technology Transfer Program. And the reason we started it was we found that the mRNA technology had proven itself to be very useful. It provided, 2 of the best vaccines for COVID. At the same time, many populations did not have access to it. So we believe that any new technology should be democratized. The knowledge and information should be democratized and opportunity given to all regions of the world to benefit from it. So this tech transfer program on mRNA actually today is quite thriving and successful in the sense that there are about 16 institutions across the world, all in low and middle income countries, that are engaged in mRNA for some public health good. Obviously not for COVID anymore, but for other diseases. And I think in the next few years, we will see a lot of new mRNA products actually coming and being useful both in animal health and human health. So that's one example. The other is Africa. Africa CDC and the African region saw what happened when you don't have your own production and manufacturing capabilities. You are dependent on either imports or on donations from other countries at the time of a crisis like a pandemic. That is not the best position to be in. And therefore, and this is something that WHO again supported, local manufacturing. Now across Africa, there is agreement and there's a lot of effort and investment going into local manufacturing and production. Of course, you have to invest in all the way from the R&D, early R&D value chain to the manufacturing in a quality assured manner, to being able to do it at an affordable cost, and then to be able to distribute it. So the logistics of that, the benchmarking, the regulatory side of things. So there are multiple issues and areas there which need strengthening. But the fact that they now have a plan, that many groups around the world are supporting that, there is investment by the African countries themselves, means that in the next 20, 30 years, they'll be in a much better position than they were during the COVID pandemic. And I think the third learning was around regulatory systems and how we could be much more nimble during the pandemic, how regulators from around the world came together to agree on a common benchmark and practice for regulation so that we don't keep repeating this thing country after country and wasting a lot of time. It really helped to accelerate access to the new products. So that is a learning which is in some way being used now, but it's something that was a very good example and a best practice which countries should continue, either at the regional level or at the global level. So for example, the WHO pre-qualification is a global benchmarking system. There could be regional ones as well, which can accelerate access to products at the regional level. And India, for example, could really take a lead in this as being a large nation with a large manufacturing and R&D base in our part of the world.
And Dr. Swaminathan, surveillance systems depend on trust and data sharing. How dangerous is a world where countries selectively share outbreak information based on political interest?
So I think my thought on this is that, yes, regional alliances, I think, will get strengthened. The Africa CDC and the African plan to expand manufacturing on the continent is one example. Similar initiatives are happening in other regions, but I don't think it can replace a global platform or an agency like the WHO, which brings all countries together. So I don't think it's or. I think it should be, yes, we need regional bodies and regional alliances for some things, but we also need the global alliance, which is the WHO.
And health misinformation on undetermined vaccine campaigns and public compliance worldwide, do you think should states treat large-scale health disinformation as a national security threat?
Yeah, this is a very critical issue. I think selective sharing of data is very dangerous. It's dangerous for the countries themselves that are doing it, and it's dangerous for other countries, especially the neighboring countries. And nowadays with globalization and with the kind of interconnectedness, a threat anywhere in the world is a threat everywhere in the world. You can't really stop it. So the best protection that we have as a human community, as a global community, is to share the data as quickly as possible so that action can be taken. And we know from experience of COVID as well as other infectious diseases like SARS and like Ebola, even Nipah, that early action, quick action, local action makes a big difference. And also the help can come in, from outside as well, if you need that help and support. So I think data sharing is going to be critical. The only thing there is, as I had said earlier, that along with data sharing, we also have to think about the benefits that flow back to the people and the countries that actually share the data.
India has massive pharmaceutical capacity and public health expertise, but can it realistically shape global health governance, or will geopolitical rivalry limit its influence?
I would agree with that. I think health mis and disinformation can become a security threat and should be treated as one. Why? Because it results in behaviors which are injurious to people's health. For example, if there are large anti-vax campaigns which start impacting your immunization programs, you're going to have multiple outbreaks of infectious diseases. We're already seeing that happening in the US, for example, and in a few other countries where there is a lot of anti-vax and vaccine denialism going on. So that's one example. But similarly, health misinformation could also lead to people doing unhealthy things or experimenting with drugs or products which could be harmful to health. So I think that for ministries of health today, this is a new challenge. It has to be taken up very seriously, and it should be treated as a national security threat. Apart from that, you also have now these AI fake videos, doctored videos. And that's again one form of disinformation, which is very challenging actually to detect. So again, the ministries and departments of health really need to increase their own capacity to deal with these new threats.
And with climate change accelerating zoonotic spillovers, what is the single most urgent reform needed right now to prevent the next outbreak from becoming another global catastrophe?
Well, my own opinion is that India can actually play a very important role and really help to shape the global health architecture. And it's for the reasons that you already mentioned, which is that we have, of course, the largest population in the world. So what happens in India impacts global health in a very big way. but also we have a large scientific base here, large R&D capacity, very good manufacturing infrastructure. And not only that, we usually are able to do affordable innovation. That's been our mantra. Actually, we have a lot of startups now who are creating some wonderful products in health, which will benefit the whole world. So I think we have an amazing opportunity and capacity, if we wanted to have a much bigger impact on what happens in global health. And I think that we will see that playing out in the next few years.
Dr. Swaminathan, thank you very much for joining us here on Future X. It was a pleasure to talk to you. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Future X. For more stories on the science and innovations shaping tomorrow, stay with us here on NewsX World.